What up? What up? It's Garage Jim, homie, and today I'm talking to you about my story through my heroin addiction, my journey. Is it worth it? Before we get into this here, please click the subscribe button. I got content coming out all the dang time for you, man. So click subscribe and let's get into this, man. God bless all of you. You know, this is an important video. This was this is a huge part of my life, man. I mean, this is, everything about my addiction I put on the table for you and made the channel to be transparent. And the reason I talk about this stuff, it reminds me of where I came from because I don't sit around much and think about it, all the dang time. And it also lets you know that if I can make it out, man, as hopeless as I was, anybody can, man. Anybody can, because I was in deep, and you're going to hear about it right now. And I just want you to know, man, if you're a struggling addict or alcoholic and you want to sponsor, I would be honored to guide you through the steps. And I sponsor people all over the country, man. So hit me in the email, garagejimhomie@gmail.com. I would be glad to give my time to you. So let's talk about it, man. When I was, I think 18 years old was my first experience with heroin. You know, I had already been, I was 18 going on 19. I mean, close to 19. I think it was in the summer when my birthday is. And I had already done Xanax and, everything, man, besides heroin and crystal at that point. And some dude called me, man, locally who, from the area, and he said, "Hey, man, if you give me a ride to the hood to get some H, I'll give you some." And I remember, man, that was a long 18, that was almost 20 years ago. I didn't even think twice. I just said, okay. And I took him, man. And if you know, I live in an area where we're very close to the hood in Detroit. It's like these nice suburbs where I live, and there's a very fine line right there, 10 minutes. You're in the worst hoods in Detroit, man. And so it wasn't a long drive, man. I drove him. He copped the dope. And it comes in little lotto tickets here in Michigan. Here in Michigan, it's powder heroin. It's not black tar, which is what I got hooked on in California. It's like that China white fine powder, and almost like a tan color. And so he brought it back, man. And I remember he sniffed it. He got sick as a dog. He must have just started, and he was puking all over and stuff at my house. And I was living with my parents at the time. They weren't home. And I sniffed some. And I remember, man, feeling amazing. That I was higher than, high as a kite. And I loved how I felt, man. And it wasn't very often that it was, I waited maybe another month or two and then did it again. Always sniffing it at this time. Did it again until it started getting more frequent, of course. And, then I started knowing a lot of white people in my area. I was like one of the first, but this is when heroin got really big again. It made its comeback. And I was like one of the first people I knew who was up on it. And then people I started knowing. So we would go together to Detroit. We would cop. I would sniff it. Till finally, I ended up, I was in East Lansing. I was living up there after this time, and I let this girl named Christina, and she's dead now, I believe from overdose. And I remember telling her that she could shoot me up, and I put my arm out and I looked away, and she did it, and I didn't really feel it because I think she did so little that I didn't really feel anything. So after that, man, I was boys with these two Russian dudes, Dennis and Konstantin from the area, and we used to go cop dope together. I had a neighbor over here named Scott. We used to cop dope. We were all friends, and I remember, man, I started letting them shoot me up, man. We'd be in the car. I'd put my arm back in the back seat. I'd look away. I didn't want to watch, and I let them cook it up in the spoon and shoot me up. And I would be freaking, just as high as it gets, man. So I was kind of switching up at that time between sniffing it and shooting it. And I swear to you, man, I did heroin in Michigan for 2 years before at least 2 years before I moved to California. And I never got dope sick. Never. I don't know how that is, but I never got dope sick. Now, right when I moved out to California, man, I wasn't doing heroin. First, I moved to Texas for a few months, then I went to California. I had stopped doing heroin, and I had a first love, man, first love of my life. I mean, this was my first real girlfriend. We dated for over 2 years when I was 16 and 17 years old. Her name's Kelsey. And the last time I saw her, man, she was hooked on heroin too. And I was doing heroin. When we got together, last time I saw her, we did dope together. And we were shooting heroin, all that. And then I moved to California, man, like right after my mom died. And I got the phone call from a friend from high school. She died too from heroin overdose. She died doing, my first love died from doing crack and heroin in some dude's van in Detroit. So that was pretty insane, man. And just to let you know where I come from with this, I counted after I got sober. I've known about over 70 people who have died from drug overdose. Maybe a few from suicide, but just about all of them I've counted after I got sober. I know about over 70 people at least that I used to run with. And I'm going to tell you right now, not one of them, not one person that I knew who I ever ran with or who died was worse off in their addiction than I was. I don't know one person who is more deep and more hardcore of a freaking heroin addict than me. And I made it through somehow, and they all died. And I look back, man, God was there the entire time, man, because there's a bigger purpose for me, man. I'm not saying there wasn't for them, you know, I'm not the end all be all, but I'm just saying that I look back and God was there the whole time because I had a ton of overdoses. I had flatlined. I had been shot up with Narcan. I had been in the hospital. I have died, and I came back. So when I got to California, man, I started dating the chick who I've talked about, the porn star. I wasn't doing any heroin. I was just smoking weed, doing Xannies, all the other drugs. And then she introduced me to Crystal. And finally, man, I was running with some dudes out there, you know, doing dirt. And they introduced me to black tar heroin. Now, the first time I found black tar heroin, I didn't even know what to do with it. She put it in the oil burner for the crystal pipe, and it ruined it. We didn't know what to do. So then they taught me, you know, you put it on the foil, and you cut a pen, and you chase the dragon. So you light it, and it runs down the foil while you smoke it. Now, I started smoking heroin, black tar heroin now, so dang much, you know, that I freaking developed asthma, like a horrible, horrible case of asthma. My ex, the porn chick, who is, you know, I was living with, I lived with her for like 2 years we dated. She would stay up at like all night and watch me because she thought I was going to die in my sleep because I couldn't even breathe. I was doing heroin. I don't know if it was the black tar itself that gave me the asthma or the foil. I don't know which or both probably. But I developed a horrible case of asthma. And I saw the doctor, and I didn't tell him I was doing dope, but he prescribed me an inhaler, so I was using it, and I would smoke heroin down the foil, shoot up the inhaler, you know, puff on the inhaler. It was freaking madness, dude. So it got to the point where two things happened. Number one, I couldn't even freaking feel the heroin anymore from smoking it. It didn't really take much of an effect on me. And number two, Number two, I couldn't handle the asthma anymore. So, of course, I went back to shooting it. And the point is this, when I went back to, when I smoked heroin, and I was smoking heroin when I got to LA, it did not take long. And then I woke up one day and I remember feeling this like flu symptoms. I was hot and cold. I had the creepy crawl. I wanted to jump out of my skin. And I remember having this thought. I was at my boy's apartment. We ran a model house with these porn stars together in Woodland Hills. And where we were basically getting these girls to come into porn and then hooking them up with agents. And we were letting them stay there till they got on their feet, all that. I remember thinking that second, this is what heroin withdrawal feels like. I finally understand what heroin withdrawal feels like. I did heroin for 2 years in Michigan, all the dang time, dude, and never had heroin withdrawal from the China White. I don't know how I got away with it, but right when I got to LA and I started doing heroin, not long after I was in LA, I went for months and then started. It did not take long for that black tar, and then I started getting heroin withdrawal, and I started getting it, a lot. So, I went back to shooting it, and it was off to the races, man. I was back fully loaded, heroin withdrawal. I've done, was doing speedballs where you do coke and heroin. I was doing meth and heroin together. I was just a complete maniac, man. And heroin was number one for me. That was always the base. I couldn't do any drugs really unless I had heroin there. Because if I did crystal, I needed heroin to come down. Heroin would put me back so I'd feel okay again, or I could sleep, or I could nod out, or whatever. It would take the edge off. Heroin was always the number one drug for me. Always, man. And now looking at it now, like the person I am today, I like being productive. I would do heroin and just pretty much do nothing all day. But the whole day was based on missions to getting heroin. Once I was down and out, when I had the money or whatever, it was easy. When I was doing dirt and all that, you always have it because you have the money or whatever. When it's things get worse and worse and more progressive in the addiction. I lost my apartments and I went to prison and I was on the street living out of motels. The whole day was just based on missions. That was my entire life. Where am I going to sleep and finding dope? I'm taking freaking public transportation to, meet up the dope dealer. It's in all Hector on La Brea, this, that, this dealer, that, finding, so I could get it. I found myself on Skid Row, copping balloons from random people. And, the balloons are that big with a little dope in it. And you don't know if it's good dope, bad dope, this or that. And this was before, like, fentanyl was really a worry. That was not really a concern, So my disease, my addiction got so freaking bad, dude. When I was shooting dope, a lot of time I didn't have any veins left. So I was shooting in my calf. You could see I got a huge scar in my calf from abscesses. There was nothing left except really my calf muscles. I had collapsed all my veins. And if I would miss, I had abscesses through my body. And it would develop in these huge abscesses. And I would try and take a needle and pop them and pick them. And it was absolutely disgusting. And it would get in my skin. And I had MRSA all the time, like all the time. Dude, I would have fevers, probably, I don't know my temperature. I was in motels and living on the streets and all that. Probably 104 degree, dude, like trying to fight these. My body was, had these infections. And I would have to go to Cedar Sinai Hospital. I've done it 2 or 3 times. I can't remember. At least twice, I remember. And they would have to, one time I had one on my wrist so big it was like a freaking grapefruit. They had to do it and then lance it and get all the stuff out. I had to stay there for a week on IV vancomycin, which is like the strongest antibiotic. And it was just normal for me to have abscesses all over my body because I didn't have so many veins left. And sometimes I would just put it in the muscle and shoot it up just to get the dope in my system. That's how freaking disgusting that things got. And I was so bad, dude. I remember I was dating my ex, not the porn chick, a girl after that I dated for 2 years also. She was my roll dog on the streets, and they would put a cot in Cedar Sinai. I was in for a week. They'd roll a bed in there for her. They let her stay with me twice. And I didn't tell them. I told them at Cedar Sinai, I said, yeah, I'm a recovered heroin addict, so I still get MRSA here and there. It still comes up randomly, which is a lie. I was actively doing dope, and I have to guess that they freaking knew it. And I was having drug dealers meet me. This is how bad it was. I was there being treated for abscesses. I would have her run down and meet the dope dealer who came and brought dope and doing dope in there low key while I was there being treated for MRSA and stuff. I couldn't stop. I was shooting up in there. Or I remember maybe once I even put it in a spoon and just sniffed it or whatever, and I was withdrawing, but they were giving me opiates in there to fight the pain from the abscesses and all that. So it was stopping me from having like full-on withdrawals. So it was an extremely brutal addiction. And I mean, even when I went to jail in LA County Jail, I never did it in prison, never did dope in prison, but it was there everywhere, of course. But I did in LA County Jail. You'd take it on a plastic spoon, you'd sniff it. It was so common. And it was just insanity, man. My whole entire day and life was just planned around getting dope. And I just remember it just got to the point where it just wasn't working anymore. I mean, I was hardly getting high. I would just do it and do it and do it just to stay normal, just from getting sick, basically. It just got to the point where you're just doing dope just to not be sick. And I just remember sitting there in these motels, man. We were playing the system with getting these, not just the food stamps in California, but we'd get these hotel vouchers from the Social Security office for like 3 weeks at a time. So I'd have a place, and these hotels were in the worst hoods ever in Los Angeles, man. And I've had my hotel room broken into by the freaking maintenance man, and he stole things that I had, man. Like, it was so, the maintenance man was getting high with us, and he knew what we had. They stole stuff from us. It was absolutely horrible. So we were playing, and I just remember just sitting there in those motels, just sick, dude, for hours. Some of the times it was because I was trying to detox. I always knew in my heart, like, dude, you're not supposed to be on this. So you'd have to be off the dope long enough to take the first Suboxone, and it was just, most of the time I didn't make it. I would just end up copying, getting high. Always tomorrow, always tomorrow, always tomorrow. Because it was miserable, dude. It was freaking miserable. But there was always this power in me, man. Like, I always maintained a good attitude. Like, I know that's hard to believe, but I always had like a positive spirit. Even when I was sitting there dope sick, I remember joking with my ex and trying to laugh and make her laugh, and like we, just always had a drive in me to keep going. I've never thought of hurting myself, intentionally or anything like that. But I mean, dude, I've overdosed really bad and woke up in hospitals with catheters and just absolutely horrendous, disgusting situations where I'm so blessed I made it through. And it was just, I don't even know how toward the end, man, when I was completely down and out, always managed to figure out how to get money for dope. I mean, the drug addict in me always, like, I've lived so good in California. for a drug addict, you know, with my own apartments in Santa Monica. You know, when you're doing dirt and doing all that stuff, you know, balling out of control, it's one thing. But then it got so bad where, you know, like I had no power in the place. The bounty hunters kicked the door in and freaking took me back to jail. There wasn't even a lock on my door for a while. Somebody else walked in there, put a knife to me and robbed me. Drug dealer knew where I was at. I was just, you know, till I lost that place and just living on the streets for my last, you know, year and a half, 2 years out there, just absolutely just horrible. I've slept on the streets in Koreatown, all strung out on dope, man. Shooting dope. I used to go in Starbucks, man. Going in a Starbucks bathroom now brings me back because we used to go in Starbucks and just buy a bagel just to buy, you know, spend $1 with cream cheese just to buy a couple hours in there so they couldn't say I wasn't a customer. So I could charge my phone, go in the bathroom because all Starbucks have single person bathrooms, and do dope in there. I remember the smell of every Starbucks bathroom was the same. And once I got sober, just smelling that smell of a Starbucks bathroom brought me right back. I was so sick. Dude, it was just absolute mission after mission trying to stay well, to the point where I got so much abscesses, so much sickness, so much horrendous, just horrible dope sick and hospital stays, where I got to the point where if I stayed in California, there was nothing left for me, man. And God came in my life, and I was ready to be done for good, and I was willing to do whatever it takes, man, to get sober. And that's when my brother just showed up there at the exact right time and brought me home, man. And I remember doing freaking, I had heroin. I told my brother he was taking me to get Vicodin so I wouldn't be sick on the way home. And I lied to him, man. And he took me to meet the homie on La Brea, and I bought the last of my heroin. And I knew in my heart that was the last of the heroin. And I had an abscess. And my brother sent me on a Greyhound because I had warrants in Michigan that I had to clear up, which I cleared up after I got sober and I had to do time. He sent me home on a Greyhound because I couldn't fly. And it was a 2-3 day Greyhound with all the transfers and everything to get from California to Michigan. And I did dope the entire time, man, on that Greyhound bus. And I don't think I felt it once, man. I don't think I felt it one time. It was just enough to keep me from being sick. But I was sick. I had a fever too that whole time on that Greyhound bus from a staph infection that I had to treat when I got home. And I remember there was one stop away in Ypsilanti, Michigan, was the last stop on the Greyhound bus before coming to my final stop where my dad would pick me up from the Greyhound station. And I did the last of my dope. That was the last time I ever did H. And I remember not feeling it at all. I got rid of the needles. I smoked my last cigarette there too. Never bought a pack of cigarettes again, man, in my life. And I never looked back, man. It was freaking, I just knew, when you know in your heart you're done for good, none of that one day at a time, you know you're done for good. I was done for good, man. I felt it. You know, I am absolutely blessed that I never had HIV or hepatitis C, because I was not sharing. I shared needles with my ex-girlfriend, but I figured she was clean because she had never done IV drugs before me. But I used to share spoons with a lot of people, man. We would cook the dope together, whether it was crystal, heroin, whatever, and we'd all put our spoon, you know, me and whatever homie I was with, put our spoons in the cotton and would suck it up. And you can get sick like that, man. You can catch something sharing spoons. So I'm extremely blessed that I never caught anything like that. And I did used to get cotton fever a lot. When you would cook dope, you use a cotton, and we would save our cottons and put it in a bag. And I remember, man, a lot of people, this is a common thing with dope heads, we'd save the cotton, so when I run out of dope, I had all those cottons that had, you know, some dope still in there, so we'd push a bunch of cottons in a spoon and try and get all the dope out you could. And sometimes they would like grow a bacteria on it from sitting so long, the wet cottons. And you take it, and right away you would get this horrible fever. Absolutely like one of the worst sicknesses in the freaking world, and it's called cotton fever. And I would get that all the time, man. It would go away in a few hours. You'd have to shoot more dope and stuff, but it was like putting a bacteria in you from saving. And sometimes it wouldn't happen. Most of the time it wouldn't happen, but when it happened, it was absolutely horrible. And I just remember, man, the monkey was on my back so tough. I just remember being in LA County Jail. A couple times this happened, and sometimes I would get out of jail so fast because I'd either get bailed out. I knew a bail bondsman who bailed me out on my word, so I could pay him when I got out. He knew I was good for it. So as soon as I went to jail, I could call him, and he would bail me right out. And I remember being downtown LA, and I just remember being in that holding cell, man, for like a whole day when they released you in LA County Jail. And all I could think about, it was just consume me, copping dope. The second I get out, I'm going to cop dope. I remember being in the cell with somebody, and I'd be like, he would be like, hey man, you look sick. I'd be like, yeah, I'm dope sick. I wouldn't even be in jail long enough to go through the withdrawals, just to be starting the withdrawals and starting them really bad. And I remember both times I got released downtown LA, I managed to get dope immediately, right when I got out. And the point is, it was just this monkey on my back that I could not get off, man. There was just every part of me, it's all I could think about was shooting dope, shooting heroin, staying well, not getting sick, getting high. And that was it, man. That was my entire life when things were bad in California. I mean, just shooting dope, shooting dope, shooting dope. And the fact that I can stand here today and God has just lifted my obsession to drink or get high, and staying sober is not a struggle, is the absolute most amazing thing in the world. If you knew me then and you knew me today, there's no choice but to believe in God. All those I went to 20 rehabs, man, 20. And in all those rehabs, I just never, ever thought that it would be, I thought staying sober would be this lifelong struggle. I always thought that staying sober was just this lifelong battle that I would have to face to stay sober, because that's what sobriety was. I had no clue that it was possible to feel like I do today, where I have absolutely, it's just been lifted from me. And that's how powerful the 12 steps are in God. And I just want you to know, if you're dealing with that, if you're struggling to stay sober, you can have that experience too. Everybody who I've guided who went through these steps from their heart has that experience. It's been lifted. The obsession is gone. And that's unbelievable, because I feel like I'm describing a person that's not even me right now. So I hope you enjoyed this video, man, letting you know where I came from and how dark it was. I'll make more shorter videos like this, but I wanted to tell my story with heroin addiction. So please comment, hit the like button. Please give me a comment, man. Let me know what you think. God bless all of you, man. Together, let's get this dang muscle. I'm out.